In Midsummer Mallow, people are dying during the Perfect Village competition. Maybe the killer is going for most perfect pitchfork stabbing? We're talking child murderers.
The perfect English village.
And Lord of the Rings on this episode of
Welcome to Midsomer.
Hello, and welcome to Midsomer, the podcast where we dissect all the mysteries, the murders, and the many weird things about the long-running hit TV show, Midsomer Murders. I'm your host, Eric Buscher, and with us as always is my co-host, Eileen Becker. Hi, Eileen.
Hello, Eric. Today we are talking about Judgment Day, the third episode of the third series. It originally aired January 20th in the year 2000. It was directed by Jeremy Silbertson and written by Anthony Horowitz. Both of them helped create the show and wrote and directed the pilot, The Killings of Badger's Drift. Let's raise a glass of homemade wine to it.
Spoiler warning, we will be discussing the events of this episode, including the identity of the murderer. So if you haven't watched yet and don't want to know who done it, pause this and go watch it. We will still be here when you get back.
If you don't mind removing your hand from that dog's ass, Gordon, darling, it's time to go.
We open in the past, probably the 50s. Young Annabelle Wested is throwing a temper tantrum because her parents are going out for the night, leaving her in the care of the housekeeper. She doesn't get her way and ends up being scolded by said housekeeper, and that doesn't work out too well for the housekeeper, who is stabbed to death later that night. The parents return home to discover the body, and Annabelle sleeping peacefully, the bloody knife in the hands of her creepy doll. Flash forward to the present day. Well, the late 90s. In the village of Midsummer Mallow, the citizens are prepping for the upcoming Most Perfect Village competition. Planners for the event include local vets Gordon and Laura Brierly, local butcher Ray Dorset, local music teacher Barbara Drinkwater, and local rich retirees Marcus and Bella DeVere. They are excited to meet the judges, a collection of mid-level celebrities and one lucky contest winner, Joyce Barnaby. Joyce is looking forward to getting away for a week to help judge the contest, while Tom, I'm sure, is looking forward to actually being able to eat for a week. She's worried that Tom will end up in the Mallow solving some grisly murders, but he puts her at ease. No murders. Just a series of burglaries. These burglaries are the work of local tough Peter Drinkwater and his buddy Jack Dorset, that son of a butcher. Apparently, everyone in the village feels the need to tell Ray their travel plans so Jack can overhear them, and then the pair rob the buildings. Peter also makes some money on the side, servicing housewives like Laura while also dating the DeVere's daughter, Carolyn. Where does he find the time?
Who knows?
At their next job, the pair break into the estate of actor Edward Allardyce, unaware that someone is watching them from the shadows. Barnaby and Troy investigate the break-in and interview Allardyce, who gives them a description and plate of the getaway van. He claims he saw the van as he was returning from London, but Barnaby quickly finds some holes in that story. The van leads them to Ray, who points them in the direction of Peter. They attempt to interrogate Peter, who tells them where they can go and drives off. Barnaby tells Troy to get a warrant. They are going to do things properly this time, as opposed to all those other times?
Seriously.
As they await their warrant, Gordon Brierly discovers Peter's been sleeping with his wife, and the DeVeres find out that Peter's been sleeping with their daughter. Carolyn finds out Peter's been sleeping with Laura. Oh, and Roy pretty much admits to Jack that he wants to kill Peter. So, while Peter attempts to hide all the loot, he's interrupted by someone at his front door who shoves a pitchfork in his chest. The detectives arrive and find Peter dead. Dr. Dan Peterson, the temp coroner, tells the detectives that Peter was stabbed with a ton of force and that death by pitchfork is a first for him, which pretty much means he's not been in Midsomer a long time. Barnaby interrogates Jack, who admits to the burglary. Roy admits to driving by the farm at the time of the murder, but says he saw the DeVere's car pulling away as he was leaving. The detectives visit the DeVere's home, and Marcus claims that he went to see Peter to talk to him about Caroline, but just drove off. Caroline is not too broken up about Peter's death either. In fact, not even Peter's aunt seems to miss him too much, as she votes along with almost everyone else to continue on with their plans for the competition. Allardyce answers more questions from the detectives, who want to know why he lied. He stands by his story and tells them he's lived by himself since the tragic death of his wife in a car accident. Except as they leave, he turns to an unseen person and says, "They have to be careful."
Ooh.
We'd first like to thank our listener, Nikki, for suggesting this episode. We love hearing from our fans. We actually have some fans.
We have fans!
Yay! In fact, we'd love to hear from more fans. So if you have more episodes you want us to talk about, just, feel free to email. We'll give you the email at the end. You can find us on social media. Just tell us, because we love doing this show and we love hearing from you and we love doing what you want us to do, which is talk about Midsomer.
Which we love. We do love Midsomer Murders.
We do.
Which is why we have so much fun doing this.
Exactly. I think we just need to start off with the strange kill and the village star all at one, where this is the infamous episode where Orlando Bloom gets pitchforked. Playing Peter. Yep, Orlando Bloom plays Peter Drinkwater, the initial victim for this week's episode. This is one of his earliest roles, along with playing the role is rent boy in Wild, so more male prostitution, and appearing on this TV show Casualty. Now, after this, of course, he went off to play Legolas, the elf in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and his career exploded. He became an international sex symbol and went on to co-star in the original Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy with Johnny Depp. And now, after that last film in that trilogy, he chose to mix up his career a bit and focus more on theater with some occasional film roles. He did a Romeo and Juliet that got rave reviews here in New York City. He's done a bunch on the West End. He's gone back and forth into films. He went and did the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and he also appeared as Legolas in some cameos in the last two of the Hobbit trilogy. Most recently, he starred in Carnival Row for Amazon, where a second season, I guess, is coming. COVID caused some delays on that. He also starred in the animated show The Prince, playing Prince Harry on Showtime, but that got canceled. He's developing a miniseries about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid for some reason, and working on a project called Wizards with the comedian and former Kim Kardashian plaything Pete Davidson.
That's just so weird.
I think he does like to do comedy, and he doesn't get to do it a lot, so it should be interesting. He also appeared as the villain in the horribly titled film Needle in a Time Stack. I literally saw the trailer for that movie, and I was like, oh, this looks like it's a time travel premise where this married couple is split up by her evil ex who's traveled back in time to kind of keep her and split them apart. And I was like, oh, this sounds like an interesting premise. And then you see the title of the film, Needle in a Time Stack. And I was like, is this an episode of Punk'd? Am I being punked? That can't be real.
It's like the Terminator, except domestic.
Yeah. So now Orlando Bloom has said in interviews that he got the Midsomer gig because he had been cast in Lord of the Rings, but hadn't started filming it yet. So he went into audition for this role, and he mentioned that he had been cast in Lord of the Rings, and they pretty much just gave him the role. The funny thing is, he's not in the credits.
I know. It's weird.
Even that's the thing, is we knew that Lord of the Rings might be a big thing, and they didn't put him in the credits.
Well, it's weird because it's not a minor role. It's not a cameo. He has a lot of dialogue and, gets pitchforked. That deserves a credit.
Yeah, I will say is that it's not his strongest performance.
No.
He's very good at being intense in there. He's popping his eyes, and he's like, "Yeah, are you losing your bottle?
You losing your bottle, Jack?"
But he's also not you see him without a shirt on. He's like, "You're not really scary, dude. You're yeah, I guess you'd be scrappy and wiry, but I'm not your friend. Even if you got into a fight with your friend Jack, I'm pretty sure Jack would win."
I don't know.
And then the when he opens the door, it's like, what? It both looked real and hysterically funny when he just kind of falls backward with a pitchfork sticking in his chest.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
I think that's one thing that makes it so memorable is the way it is done and the way it is filmed. I mean, that just film of him in that shaft of light from the doorway, and he's in profile, that full body profile, and the pitchfork just sticking out of him, and he just falls backward. That is great. I love it. It's Midsomer at its best.
It was a terrific black comic sequence. There's a lot of black comedy in this. especially like Bloom's character, like when they're robbing Allardyce's house, he's just like smashing stuff for no reason. It's just like, oh, it was so silly. It wasn't his strongest performance. Obviously, they weren't really thinking that much about it. Although, now, there is some debate about this online. I have not found a conclusive statement one way or the other. But yeah, there is a Lord of the Rings mention in this episode. The De Vere's house has Lothlorien. I guess that's how you say it. I don't speak Elvish. On their front wall, and Troy and Barnaby have a conversation about Lord of the Rings, and Troy never read it, and it just seemed like a real funny little shot at Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It sounded like something they kind of added after they cast Orlando Bloom, but it's funny because this is they're walking in, and it does give you a little bit of insight into Troy and the kinds of books he likes.
Also, it's like ironic. Apparently, it's ironic that Orlando Bloom is not an elf of Lothlorien; he is an elf of Mirkwood.
See, you are such a nerd. You would know
I got that from the internet. I like two more little Bloom things. I thought it was hilarious when Troy,
of all people,
Troy called Peter Drinkwater obnoxious.
Yeah.
I was like, he is such an obnoxious person, and I know obnoxious. And also, I thought it was. Did you think it was a little strange that, like, when Drinkwater is walking away from having sex with Laura Brierly, and then he's just literally walking past Gordon, who's in his garage, not hiding, plain as day visible, doesn't seem to see him at all.
People are not very observant. We just have to remember that.
So let's talk about the opening a little bit.
Yes.
It is that rare episode where we actually don't start in the present day, and we don't start with the first murder.
No, it's interesting. It starts in the 50s. We find out later it takes place in 1955, and it's beautifully filmed. I kind of love that it broke a lot of the format that Midsomer settles into with that opening, and with the first present day murder being so late in the episode.
Right. I agree. I love the way that first few minutes, I guess it's the killer's POV shot, those like kind of slow tracking shots through the Weston's mansion or estate or whatever, the way it kind of floats down the stairs. And then of course you never actually see the person who kills the maid. You just see sort of this person holding a knife.
Yeah. And you wonder initially, because I remember the first time I watched it, I was of two minds of, did the child do the killing, or was there somebody who was doing something against the parents and they killed the housekeeper and left the knife in the child's room as a warning?
I agreed. Like, I was like, well, they're setting it up to look like the kid did it, but did the kid do it? And because it's never really referred to until the second half, which we'll get to, I kind of forgot about it a little bit. Like, it's in the back of my head as like, well, that whoever killed the maid is somewhere around here. It's like whatever that's about is somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it's not really talked about until the second half. It just sort of stays in the background. Why do all creepy child killers have weird dolls?
Or play weird games. Yeah, there aren't a whole lot of child killers in the show, but there are a few. I don't want to spoil future episodes, but this is
I'm pretty sure that whoever's listening to this will know the episodes.
Yeah, well, there's the one with the cheapy psychiatrist kids who try to, even kill Tom Barnaby, and then there was the one with the kid and the racehorse, Bantling Boy. Yep. But this is the first one that we see, the first child. Well, no, actually, I mean, if you count the ones that left their little kid friend to die, they weren't exactly murderers, more manslaughterers, I guess.
So basically, Midsomer is just raising child murderers.
Yeah,
child killers, I should say. Child murderers is probably also true.
Yeah.
It is a creepy child killer, but because we never actually see her do it, it's weird. And then when you find out like her motivation later on, is I guess we should let's just talk about that when we get to the second half, because I think that's like it ties into the reveal in such a way that is very confusing.
Yeah.
By the way, so you were like me when that the maid is watching a show when she gets murdered, a police show. It looks like an old police procedural like Dragnet called Casebook.
Yeah.
Which I was like, is that a real show?
It looked real.
It looked great. I mean, they did a really good job. It's not.
No.
Listeners, if you actually know that Casebook is a real show that maybe aired like a short time, because I could not find it on IMDb. I could not find any trace of this online.
Just an Australian show that was about hospitals.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that called Casebooks, but it's not this show.
Yeah.
If you know of this show, let us know, because I'd be very curious about it. But I thought, they're just like, oh, that looks like an interesting. I wonder if that's like an actual classic British show. Nope.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us on a quick village visit?
Sure. This episode, we visit lovely Midsomer Mallow, a quaint community with a nasty burglary problem. According to Gordon Brierly, it was founded in the 3rd century AD. They have medieval almshouses from the 14th century, a school orchestra that knows the Midsomer Murders theme song, oddly enough, open garden day.
Okay, we're going to pause you right there on that one, because let's just take a quick second to point out that they don't often include the theme song in the show. Mm-hmm. So it's very jarring when they, I feel like if this is a tune that exists in that world, we should, it would be funnier if it was like an Alfred Hitchcock style thing. And like every episode we sneak it in.
Yeah.
To have them just all of a sudden play the theme song, which they didn't play during the actual party, was weird.
Yeah. No, they play in an English garden at the party. But they also have open garden day and possibly a Saxon burial ground as a village green, where they have a fete every summer, bonfire night, pancake races, I really don't know what that is, and Easter egg hunts. Not to mention the homemade wine served by children. Elderberry and apricot. Cyanide was probably an improvement. Midsomer Mallow was also the setting for the season 7 episode Bad Tidings, which is the one with Cully's awful school friends. In addition to vying, probably unsuccessfully, for a most perfect village, especially after 2 of the judges die, the townspeople added a Spanish evening to their calendar of village events. It's another village surrounded by large manor houses and decrepit farms, perfect for hiding your stash of stolen goods until the coppers show up with a search warrant and you end up getting forked.
They never did say who won, did they?
I think they only made it to the second village before 2 of the judges were murdered.
That 3rd village should be like, we win by default. We didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
And
we had guys dancing with bells on their ankles. They just should have won. Joyce liked them.
By the way, when you said pancake races, I just envisioned sort of Joyce Barnaby making like a pancake that's like rock hard, and then just racing it through the grass.
People will race anything.
All right, we got a big cast in this one. So do you want to do the cast? You want to start with the cast highlights?
Sure. We'll start with Timothy West, who played Marcus DeVere. He first performed on stage in 1956 in a production of Summertime. He's had a lengthy career on stage and screen, appearing in Nicholas and Alexandra, The Day of the Jackal, Agatha, Ever After, A Cinderella Story, and Double Dragon 3, The Sacred Stones. I did not see that one. He's long been married to the actress Prunella Scales, who appeared in the Midsomer episodes Beyond the Grave, and he's the father of the actor Samuel West, who appeared in 2 Midsomer episodes. Timothy most recently appeared in the series Gentleman Jack on HBO, which I really need to see.
So Hannah Gordon played Bella DeVere. Now, she appeared in Doctor Who in the Patrick Troughton years She's in The Elephant Man. Her voice is in Watership Down, and she appeared in the final episode of One Foot in the Grave. But her most famous and probably iconic role was playing Lady Bellamy on the original Upstairs Downstairs, back when it was a cross-Atlantic hit.
The Downton Abbey of her time, yeah.
She tended to shy away from the spotlight, so there's not a lot of... at a certain point, she tended to do a lot less acting work. Her most recent credit was in the first season of Unforgotten. So it's she's still alive, but she just doesn't do a lot. Marcia Fitz-Allen played Laura Brierley. Now, she is best known for playing Sarah Bustard in The New Statesman with Rick Mayall, who also appeared in a Midsomer episode. She was married to Patrick Reichardt, who appeared in the Midsomer Murders episode Night of the Stag. But they divorced in 1995, so there is no evidence that Night of the Stag played a part in that. She's the daughter of the 17th Duke and Duchess of Norfolk, and her sister is Lady Karina Mary Gabrielle Frost, wife of Sir David Frost. She's also appeared in the films An Ideal Husband and Being Julia.
Next we have Josephine Tewson, who played Samantha Johnstone, and she's best known for playing Miss Davenport in the classic comedy Keeping Up Appearances. In fact, in 2012, she did a one-woman show called Still Keeping Up Appearances that toured until 2019. She also starred in the popular show Last of the Summer Wine. She credits her TV career to Ronnie Barker, who she appeared in sketches with for his classic TV show The Two Ronnies. Alas, she passed away just a couple of days ago as we record this, at the age of 91. Next we have Moray Watson, who played Edward Allardyce. He passed away in 2017, and this was one of his final roles. He was a classic British character actor who appeared in the original Quatermass Experiment, Upstairs Downstairs, Doctor Who, and The Pallisers. Possibly his biggest film role was The Grass is Greener with Cary Grant and Robert Mitchum. A lot of people recognize him from a lot of the Agatha Christie mysteries that have been filmed. Very good actor.
Okay. So did you recognize the actress who played Jane Rochelle?
I did not.
Well, that was the actress Sheila Fraser, and this was her final role as she passed away shortly afterwards in the year 2000. She started acting in 1944 with a role in Welcome, Mr. Washington, and she had a very long career, but probably her most well-known role, and she will probably forever be in the heart of Star Wars nerds, she plays Luke Skywalker's Aunt Beru in the original Star Wars A New Hope. Now, I would play a clip from that scene, but I don't want to get sued.
Unfortunately, she did not serve any blue milk in this episode.
I mean, she did, you saw those burnt up hands. She couldn't serve anything.
Yeah, I know.
Still hold the knife.
She held the knife.
Chloe Tucker played Caroline DeVere. Now, she only had a few roles before this, and she pretty much stopped acting after this. However, she has been very busy writing and producing. She worked on Young Dracula, Skins, Secret Diary of a Call Girl. She's currently producing The Larkins for ITV, and according to her LinkedIn page, she is a drama commissioner for ITV.
Oh, okay. And then finally, we have to call out Tobias Menzies, who played Jack Dorset. This was one of his earliest roles, obviously. It's amazing to see him and Orlando Bloom so young in this. He would very soon after go on to appear in his big break, the HBO show Rome, followed by roles in Casino Royale, Any Human Heart, Game of Thrones, and The Night Manager. His performance as Black Jack Randall in the show Outlander is one of the great villain performances. He starred in The Terror and as Prince Philip in The Crown. He will next appear in Manhunt for Apple TV and the upcoming film Beth and Dawn from the great indie director Nicole Holofcener with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And oh my gosh, he's so good.
I know he's perfected his sneer.
Yeah.
But did his sneer look a little it looked like it made his top lip disappear. Whenever he was talking or sneering in this episode, his top lip just seemed to vanish.
He is so good as Black Jack Randall, but he also plays the nicer guy, as well too. I mean, he's actually was very good as Prince Philip, who was not my favorite royal. Not that I have a favorite royal, but he's
a great actor. He is, he stands out in even I would say Rome, it's not the biggest of roles. It's an important role, but it's not a huge role, and he really is a standout. His Game of Thrones role, again, it's not very big, but he's there at the end.
Yep. You want to take us through some of the return visitors,
God,
which we have a lot.
So many return visitors. But again, this is like an early season, so they brought a lot of these people back. Richard Hope played Gordon Brierly. He appeared in the episode They Seek Him Here. Now, recently, you would have seen him in the Ipcris Files miniseries, Broadchurch, Poldark, and Doctor Who. I love that one of his early credits is the starring role in a show called Woofer. No idea what it's about, but I love the name. Maggie Steed, she played Rosemary Furman. Now, she also appeared in Left for Dead as a psychic who helps the police on a murder case, and Schooled in Murder, the infamous Cheese Wheel episode. She also appeared in 3 episodes of one of my favorite shows, The Young Ones. She appeared in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which was Heath Ledger's final film. She appeared in the show Chewing Gum, the film Paddington 2, and most recently on the TV show 10%.
Someday we will discuss how much I love Paddington. But next we have Bill Thomas, who played Ray Dorset. In the episode Picture of Innocence, he's uncredited as New Widower, and in The Magician's Nephew, his wife is murdered. Coincidence? He's another character actor with a lengthy resume, including Bergerac, Wire in the Blood, and New Tricks.
Both Barbara Jefford, who played Barbara Drinkwater, and Nicholas Grace, who played Frank Mannion, appeared in the Midsomer Murders episode The Creeper. But that's not the weirdest double feature in this episode. Caroline Faber and Richard Triner, who played the Westons in the opening of this episode, appeared together in The House in the Woods as a married couple who gets murdered.
That's so weird that they brought them back for that. And that is actually Jones's first episode. And finally, we have Marlene Sidaway, who played the doomed housekeeper, Mrs. Foster. She appeared in 4 episodes of Midsomer, including this one. She has a small role in the pilot, The Killings of Badger's Drift. And in both Written in the Blood and Death Shadows, she played a housekeeper called Mrs. Bundy. So maybe it was her, daughter who became Mrs. Bundy.
Maybe. I mean, I think it's interesting. I believe also it's kind of a weird credit, but I believe in Killings of Badger's Drift, she's also a housekeeper, or at least a servant in the house.
Yeah.
It's like, these guys are kind of stereotyped her there, didn't they?
Yeah, a little typecast there.
So we're going to take a quick break here, and then we are going to come back with the second half of this episode. And we're back. Let's jump into the second half of Judgment Day.
It was a question of supply and demand. And the truth is, Gordon's always been a bit short in the supply department, if you know what I mean. Milk?
We finally meet the judges in the Perfect Village competition. There's Country Matters magazine editor Rosemary Furman, TV garden expert Frank Mannion, and novelist and last-minute substitute Samantha Johnstone, plus Joyce. They all have their issues. Furman and Mannion hate each other. Johnston is an alcoholic. Joyce can't cook. Joyce does her best to fit in with the bunch.
Without turning into an alcoholic.
Back in the Mallow, the detectives interview Laura Brierly, who admits to seeing Peter for supply and demand sex. Gordon tells the police he had been in the surgery at the time of the murder, but Laura knows he's lying. She also finds blood all over his pants, and Gordon seems to take some great pleasure in taunting her with hints that he's the killer. Meanwhile, Cully Barnaby, who's apparently writing a book about a theater now, decides she wants to interview Edward Allardyce, who has a history with said theater. So she visits him on the day of the Perfect Village Fete, and they seem to have a nice conversation. However, she forgets her tape recorder, which is found by our mystery character. At the fete, everything is ready for the judges, who make their grand entrance. Bella DeVere thinks she sees someone take something from one of the tents, and Samantha recognizes someone she once knew in the street. Samantha orders a glass of wine, but Rosemary takes a big swig of it first. Bella begins to feel sick and falls back, knocking over the table, holding all the wine. She's still breathing, though, which can't be said of Rosemary, who's dead on the ground. Peterson says the cause of death is cyanide poisoning. Bella will live because she must have only had a small sip. She's resting at home where her husband can take care of her. Laura accuses Gordon of the murder, but he tells her he's just been torturing her because she cheated on him and he wants her out of his life. Good for you, Gordon, and also, you're a sick dude.
Totally.
Retracing the steps at the party, they realize that Samantha, not Rosemary, was the intended target. So the detectives rush to the judge's hotel, but they are too late. Samantha has been stabbed to death. Joyce tells them what Samantha said at the fete, and that Samantha had told her about being sent to a treatment facility for her drinking in Gloucestershire. In her final moments, Samantha had tried to get a number in Gloucestershire, so Barnaby and Troy decide to road trip. They find the sanitarium/asylum to be a bit more relaxed than they expected. The administrative doctor, who seems to have dyslexia, remembers Samantha even though she had been there decades ago. He says that she formed a close relationship with Annabelle Weston, the girl from the opening of the episode. The Weston case was big news when it happened in the 50s. Annabelle confessed to murdering the housemaid because she didn't like her and was locked away for years. When the doctor calls the place the retreat, Barnaby realized that Samantha had actually said she saw someone she knew in the retreat, and that Annabelle Weston is alive and well in Midsomer Mallow. Meanwhile, Cully returns to get her tape recorder, and she comes face to face with a scarred woman holding a knife. She's not a killer, though. She's Jane Rochelle, Allardyce's wife. She had been horribly disfigured in the car accident and hid away pretending to be dead. She'd been there the night of the burglary, and she was the one who saw the van. But she is not the killer. It's when Barnaby and Troy show up at the DeVeres that we get the reveal. Bella DeVere is actually Annabelle Weston, Bella for short. Marcus had met her through a Lonely Hearts column years ago. They corresponded and fell in love, getting married and changing her name so she could get a fresh start. When she realized her daughter planned to go off with Peter, her murderous ways returned, and she's the one who drove over and forked him. Marcus claimed he was the driver because he knew instantly that she had been the killer. When Samantha, who was a replacement judge, showed up, Bella decided she had to kill her, otherwise she would reveal her true identity and everything would come to light. She made up a story about seeing someone and then poisoned the bottle, taking a sip herself and smashing into the bottles to cover up the evidence and give herself an alibi. She just didn't anticipate Rosemary taking the swig first. So while she was supposed to be recuperating at home, she raced over and stabbed Samantha. However, the detectives can't arrest her. Marcus has already killed her to keep her from being locked away again. So that was the show does a lot of bait and switches this episode, both with sort of the mystery person, the Jane Rochelle character as this mystery person, as well as the whole Gordon thing.
Yeah, they play the red herrings well.
Yeah. In fact, if you like, there was a shot in the Allardyces where you see there's the same creepy dolls that we see in Annabelle's.
Yeah.
But when you actually get the reveal, so has she just not been killing this entire, like she's been out and about and just hasn't killed anybody in forever, and then just like, nah, screw it.
Yeah, it doesn't completely work for that. As much as I love this episode, I think that's kind of a weak point. Because for me, it's like with Peter Drinkwater, he would have been easily bought off. Give him £100, £200, he would have left town. Also,
like the daughter's like, 20 years old, and if she had just waited 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I just waited 10 minutes and we found out, oh no, this guy's not going to happen. But I just feel like if she did that to protect her daughter, there's got to be like a string of like dead like bullies at school.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of unsolved murders in her past that her husband just never got hold of in his brain. Though I will say, Timothy West, the realization when they're having that conversation and being interviewed, and the facial expressions he goes through without giving everything away at that point is really quite good.
I think there was some subtlety in the performances, because I was reading her as like just very reserved and quiet. And I guess it's just more like, she's kind of sociopathic, or she's psychopath. Like, I don't like, they don't quite explain what the actual thing that's wrong with her is, because she killed the maid because she didn't like her. But they never actually explain, is she a psychopath? In which case, would she be able to form love relationships? If she was a sociopath, she definitely would not have been able to form a love relationship. But the murder in itself is based on her wanting to protect her daughter. They don't quite explain it. It's a gray area that they use to justify the murder. Not justify, I guess, but to give her a motive.
There seems to be some sort of, I don't know if I want to call it sociopathy or narcissism, where those close to her are people she wants to keep too close. The way her parents, left to go out to a very reasonable dinner. She did not want that, and she got mad at the housekeeper because if the housekeeper hadn't been there, maybe her parents wouldn't have gone out for a very nice dinner.
But that's just it. It's like if Ray, like she's angry at Peter and she's angry at the maid, but that's a pretty, like, Peter's probably a higher level of anger.
Yeah.
As a child, like how much rage was in that child that her first response was like, I'm stabbing this woman.
Yeah.
Like, again, if it's like a low level of rage.
Yeah.
That sets her off. Like a constable who pulls her over to give her a traffic ticket would have probably gotten a butter knife to the neck.
I don't know. I mean, she seems more protective of her daughter than though she is very grateful for her husband for kind of giving her an alibi.
But I also kind of was thinking at the end, is like, did the husband kill her to protect her? Or did he kill her because, well, if she's going to start killing off everyone who knows her secret?
Both. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I see the parallels to The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, the classic Agatha Christie mystery, and the ending there. But we'll get to that in a...
No, we can talk about it now.
Okay.
Let's just
yeah.
I mean, you're right. This episode is clearly inspired by that.
Yeah.
I think it's the generous way to say it.
Yeah, there are things that when I was watching it, and recently when I was watching a lot of the Agatha Christie adaptations that they've done for ITV and BBC and all that, and that is one of the classic ones. And you've got an episode that takes place far in the past that influences everything that happens in the present. You have an actor and coming to live in a large manor house in the village, though this one is much more reclusive. You've got poisoning at a village affair, which is very, very reminiscent of the poisoning of the first victim in The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, and then of course the mercy killing of the murder by the husband at the very end. And sorry if none of you have seen The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side or read it, but I just spoiled it for you. But you should see it anyway.
We give a spoiler warning. Now, I was thinking, you mentioned Mirror Cracked, and I remember that doesn't Angela Lansbury stars in the film adaptation, right?
Yes, she did the film adaptation that had Elizabeth Taylor, Kim Novak, Rock Hudson, Tony Curtis. It is so fun and over the top. I love that version. The Joan Hickson is much closer to the book and is very, very well done.
Wouldn't you have loved to have seen Angela Lansbury guest star in an episode of Midsomer Murder? Especially if she played Jessica Fletcher?
Yeah. I would love a Jessica Fletcher cameo. She could still do it.
She would have been walking around going, there's so much blood in these murders. Also, if Jessica Fletcher were to cameo on a Midsomer Murders, that means we're that much closer from a Magnum PI Midsomer Murders crossover, because CBS showed that Magnum and Murder, She Wrote existed in the same universe.
Yep, they did. They did a lot of crossovers in those days. I remember that. That was a big thing.
I can pitch this right now. Higgins comes from Midsomer, returns and finds himself implicated in a murder. Magnum has to come over and teams up with Barnaby to solve the case. And Magnum is walking around in super short shorts
and a Hawaiian shirt
the whole time. Why am I not producing this show? I don't know.
You know.
I did think this episode was about parents and children, especially like with the daughter being the motivation. And also, so that daughter's performance up until the reveal, because I'd seen this show, I had forgotten who the killer was, and I was like, wow, that daughter is like so she's like not a great actress, because her performance is like just so one note emotion, there's just no emotion to it.
Yeah.
And then when they did the reveal, I was like, oh, I think she might have what the mom has.
Yeah. Yeah. She might be a chip off the old block there with definitely her mother's daughter with the extreme in her emotions that they're not subtle. Though I think at the retreat, the mother learned to, and sociopaths can do this, they learn to pretend to have emotions, and the daughter has never quite learned that yet. Or she's never learned the subtlety of emotions.
True. I mean, it was like, he's dead, and I don't care.
Yeah. Okay. I loved him. He loved him more than anything ever in my whole entire life, to, I don't care, he's dead. Yeah. 5 minutes later.
But that's like, so I was thinking that like up until the reveal that this is about parents and children, because, we start with the Westons and they're, and then, but it really is about husbands and wives. Mm-hmm. And there's like, if you look at like the outside of Tom and Joyce, mm-hmm. like the two best relationships in this are the DeVeres, where basically they are 100% honest that she is a murderer.
Yeah.
And then the hidden, like, the Allardyce and his wife, that even though if they've hidden away and he's pretending to be this thing, is like they are honest with each other about their lives.
Yeah.
It's the Briarleys who seem to have this kind of wonderful life, but because they are so dishonest with each other,
yeah,
that they're the worst. And then they end up with that her with her supply and demand sex requirement, mm-hmm. and then Gordon's weird like, just break up with her, dude. Like you're
that scene is so creepy the way he plays it, and I think he does a great job. But he's fixing her a coffee and himself a coffee, and it looks all so loving, and it's like, I'm ready to forgive and forget. And then at the end, and she looks like, okay, you're gonna forgive me. And then he's like, I don't ever want to see you again.
But she's justified. She was cheating around. She's screwing around.
But I think I kind of love that scene just because it sets it up for one thing, and you don't get that thing. You get something that's a big
away. No, again, the bait and switch. Like they had a multiple bait and switches, great red herrings. They actually followed through on the red herrings. And it literally was the classic mystery thing. Oh, the thing you kind of forgot about from the beginning, mm-hmm. like the Annabelle Weston, the Bella, the thing you kind of forgot about that's the real clue.
And you almost forget about Peter Drinkwater's murder in the second half as they get involved with the village perfect village competition and the subsequent murders that happen there.
Speaking of, mm-hmm. shall you take us to your special corner?
Yeah. Other than Saxon burial grounds and medieval almshouses, there's not a lot of history for an episode that starts in 1955. But Ruth Weston's dress is fabulous. Just want to say that. It's very period Dior new look, evening wear. But we're not going to go into fashion right now because that would bore Eric. We are going to talk about the brief history of the village competitions instead. Since the early 1970s, the Campaign to Protect Rural England has held a competition to designate the UK's best-kept village. Thousands of villages enter and are judged on cleanliness and absence of litter, the condition of the village green and other public spaces and buildings, the state of footpaths and stiles, rivers and ponds, and evidence of community spirit. Even the usefulness of the village map is judged. There are, in total, 10 categories worth 10 points each, and they compete in 4 categories. Villages that have won in the past 5 years, villages that are new to the competition or have not entered within the last 10 years, villages of a population between 500 and 3,000, and villages of a population of up to 500. It is not about which village is the most beautiful or picturesque or perfect, but the one that is best cared for. Winning villages get signs to put up. While the benefits of living in a clean, well-tended village are obvious, it can also draw the dreaded townies to the villages, who can then change the culture of the village. Probably by putting in a curry shop, if these early episodes of Midsomer Murders are to be believed. Fans of the movie Hot Fuzz, starring Simon Pegg, will recognize the Best Kept Village Award as a driving force behind the plot of that movie. And as discussed in our first podcast, the village of Badger's Drift is introduced to the viewers with a sign proclaiming that it had won the Best Kept Village in Midsomer honor 6 times. There was also the Callar Village of the Year, which ran from 1997 to 2009 and selected one village from each of the constituent countries of the UK for the annual honor. More recently, actress and TV presenter Penelope Keith, you cannot have a thing about villages without mentioning Penelope Keith, hosted Village of the Year with Penelope Keith in 2018. The U.S. also has an honor, though it can be for cities of any size. The All-America City Award has been given out by the National Civic League since 1949 and recognizes 10 cities a year for the honor.
So the addition, like it's kind of interesting as we were talking again about bait and switch, like that first, and you mentioned that the Peter Drinkwater murder gets sort of forgotten in the second half, and that's because all of a sudden we've switched gears into this perfect village, and we get 3 new characters at the top of the second half, which that's a rarity in Midsomer. They don't normally have the first murder so late in the episode, and they don't normally have this many new characters just pop up in a second half, especially when none of them could be the killer.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's all potential victims.
Yeah. Well, I liked the judges as characters. I thought they were interesting, and of course the way they handled the Samantha Johnstone being a last minute substitution. Otherwise, Bella would have known that she was coming. But it does, and it's weird because to me it doesn't really detract from the overall arc of the mystery, but it does make it almost, in a way, there's almost 3 different mini episodes in this. There's the opening with the 1955 mystery. There's the middle with the Peter Drinkwater murder. And then there's the final episode with the 2 murders at the best village, or the most perfect village competition. And it's bringing them all together because they're so disparate, but then bringing them all together that really makes it work.
I like the addition of the judges.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the story from the first half had the energy had sort of run its course. They needed this infusion. They needed this switch to keep the momentum going. It does feel a little weirdly disjointed for a Midsomer episode, but I think that's also because they are breaking the pattern a bit, and I'm good with that. As we pointed out, it's Horowitz and Silbertson who basically created the show,
Mm-hmm.
and they know the rules of Midsomer, so they know the rules, so they can break the rules.
Yeah. And I like that this breaks a lot of the rules, to be honest. I think that's what makes this one stand out, other than the image of Orlando Bloom with a pitchfork in his chest.
Now, a big part of this episode hinges on Samantha saying a thing that Joyce hears as in the street, and when the woman said was actually at the retreat.
You all right, Samantha? No. Oh, not all right. I just seen someone in the street.
Now, the funny thing is like I was watching her lips as she's saying this, and it's not like she says in the retreat or on the street.
Yeah.
She just says, "I just saw someone. Lips don't move, and there's a retreat."
Yeah. Obviously, she's supposed to be, drunk and swallowing like more wine or whatever, but
it's just
yeah.
Yeah, it was just it's a funny moment that they hinge everything on, like, oh, but when you actually look at it, she didn't even bother saying either, and they didn't futz with the audio, or just her mouth does not move.
Speaking of funny and a bit of wordplay, the name of the magazine is Country Matters. Now, that's also the name of the very famous sex episode of Midsomer Murders, but it's from a bit of dialogue that Hamlet, in the play Hamlet by Shakespeare, has with Ophelia, where he asks if he can lie in her lap and then clarifies when she is taken aback to put his head in her lap. The country matters is basically a reference to some very naughty stuff. If you don't know, ask your teenager who's had to study Hamlet. It's the one pun they all get. And just say, think of that first syllable.
Yeah, most parents really want to ask their teenagers about sex. It's a real comfortable subject.
Yep.
One more thing with the judges. So when we meet Frank Mannion, he is shooting a bit of his gardening show, and you see a crew and a director, and that is the actual crew and director of this episode of Midsomer Murders, who worked themselves in.
Oh, that's great. I do watch a lot of the Monty Don and other gardening shows on British TV, so I loved kind of having him as that kind of a character.
Let's pop in on home life in this episode. Obviously, Joyce and Cully are jammed into this one in weird ways.
Well, I love that, Joyce gets chosen to be a judge because of all the people in the village. Why not the wife of the lead detective of the county?
How many classes did she have to cancel for that? Like she'd have to skip that week.
Probably her cooking ones.
Yeah. And by the way, there's that scene in the beginning where Joyce is making a salad for lunch, and I'm just looking at going, how did she mess up a salad? But also, Cully is writing a book. Like, this is back in that period where, like, Cully was this driftless, I guess I'm an actress, but also work in the library van.
Yeah.
They have too many hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see Cully kind of, like, being given this. She's hanging around the theater, getting bit parts here and there, being the dresser, working on scenery and props and stuff. And they say, hey, Cully, to kind of get her out of the way, why don't you write a book on this place, this playhouse? So that's just me being kind of
like, has she written anything? Has there been any I'm trying to rack my head if there's been any indication that Cully actually likes writing or is a writer of any kind.
They never mention this book again.
Yeah. Well, they probably, the proposal probably did not go very far.
No. But I would think it would at least have been self-published and at least sold in the gift shop of the playhouse.
Probably could have gotten a real writer. No offense, Cully. We need to hit corner because this is a very cool corner episode. We got Toby Jones.
Yep.
He playing Dr. Dan Peterson. This is his last appearance on Midsomer Murders. He appeared in a total of 4 episodes during seasons 2 and 3, covering when Bullard was apparently away. Now, actor Barry Jackson, who played Bullard, said in an interview after he was left/removed from the show, he talked about how in the early seasons, there wasn't a lot for his character to do. He wasn't even really the coroner. He was just the country doctor that came in and checked on the bodies. So he kind of wasn't contracted to do every episode. And, he had the freedom to accept other jobs. So he turned down an episode in season 2 because he was touring during Harold Pinter. And they wanted him to come in for do 2 lines. He's like, no, I'm doing Harold Pinter. So they wrote him out of the show for about a season and a half. He said he thought that was petty. I agree. That's real petty.
Yeah.
But of course, they eventually brought him back because, the fans really liked Bullard.
Yeah.
And you could kind of tell that the fans probably weren't as crazy about Dan Peterson, just from the way that Barnaby and Troy never really liked Peterson with his weird humor and jokes.
Certainly one for the books, though. Death by Pitchfork. Personally, I've never seen anything like it.
How long ago did it happen?
Well, the body's still warm to the touch. No sign of rigor mortis. Half an hour to an hour, tops. Shame you didn't get here a bit sooner.
Yes.
What did you want him for?
Burglary.
Well, I suppose that's rough justice, then. Breaking and entering. That's what someone did to him. You mind if I take him?
pause when he says that line about like, that's what they did to rough justice, and they just stare at him.
Yeah.
Now, don't feel so bad for Toby Jones. Since his Midsummer's Day, he's had an incredible career. He's appeared in everything from Captain America to the show The Detectorist to the film Infamous, where he played Truman Capote and won the London Film Critics Circle Award for that one. Now, he played Alfred Hitchcock in the miniseries The Girl. He voiced Dobby, the house elf, in Harry Potter films. And coming up, he's going to be in a little film called Indiana Jones 5, as well as the film Tetris, and it's about the making of the game Tetris.
Okay.
And he's also the son of actor Freddie Jones, who we met when we did the episode The Maid in Splendor, where he played Benbow. So I like Toby Jones on this show.
I did too, and in a way, I see him as almost as a precursor to Fleur, our current coroner, because there's a similar sort of humor to them. I think Fleur is a little warmer, but I can see her hanging out with him, and they may have dated in coroner school or soon after.
He made me. I thought of him as sort of the Lenny Briscoe from Law and Order. It's like, dead body. Here's my one-liner. So they actually did some police work in this episode.
Yeah, they got a warrant.
For all the times that we've seen him just gleefully break and enter, there's like, no, we're doing this one right because this kid sucks. I kind of love that bit where like they've got the warrant, they're searching the place, we've caught this guy, and he just turns the corner, there's the dead body. He's like, oh, for heaven's sakes.
That was great. I love that.
Again, great black humor in this episode.
Yeah. Even towards the end, when you have the dyslexic psychiatrist and his problem with dogs.
Yeah, it was just so weird.
I loved it.
There's like no reason for it. Also, did you catch this bit at the very end? So when they find out that Bella is dead, like they run into the room and Tom is first.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is like, Troy.
Yeah.
Troy's the one who checks her pulse.
Yeah.
You were there first. You're like, even that, you're like, yeah, I can't be bothered to touch dead people. Troy, that's your job.
That's his job. Maybe he's better at finding pulses or something. It's an art or
It's just
craft. Who knows?
It just was like, I was like, yeah, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
I personally just thought it was really funny. They kept calling it Judgment Day.
Yeah. And instead of our day to shine as the perfect English village or something, it was Judgment Day, which, obviously, works out because 2 people died that day, but it does have a doom and gloom to it.
It does, but it was just like, it would be kind of like, well, Troy, we're going to solve the killings at Badger's Drift. What was this note about mano y mano?
Yeah, I found it weird that they had him, Marcus DeVere use the expression mano a mano when he was describing the discussions he wanted to have with Peter Drinkwater. He's going to have a talk with him mano a mano. Mano a mano does not mean man to man, which I think is what he was maybe trying to say, but it means hand to hand. So
I don't think that character took a Babbel course on Spanish.
So I just thought it was weird that it was this misuse of a Spanish expression that kind of made him seem more like a murderer because maybe he did get hand to hand with him.
Well, I think that's everything we kind of like. What's your final thoughts?
Again, I really like this episode. I think it's a really top-notch one. I think because it's got Horowitz writing it, things that shouldn't work because he knows how to break the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun. It's, again, a lot of humor to it. Great great sort of twists, bait and switches. The murderer's motivation doesn't quite add up, but most times in the show it doesn't really. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And the Orlando Bloom killing is one of the classics. So Judgment Day, in my judgment, look, if they can work it into their episode multiple times, I can work it in once.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's everything we wanted to talk about. We want to thank everyone for listening to us. And if you had anything that you feel that we missed about Judgment Day, or you want to talk about it, or Midsomer Murders in general, feel free to email us at welcometomidsomer@gmail.com. We're also Welcome to Midsomer on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to us or rating and reviewing us on iTunes. It really helps people find us. Also, tell all your friends about us. We'll be back next month, so we hope you will join us again. And as we take the road out of Midsomer, we want to thank you for listening and remind you that in Midsomer Mallow, perfect village competitions can be murder.
And usually are.
Welcome to Midsomer is produced by Eric Buscher and Eileen Becker. All clips in this podcast are used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exception for criticism and commentary. Our logo and podcast art was designed by Smeedrai. Our theme music is by the infamous Space.
Next we have Moray Wilson, who played Edward
Moray
Allardyce.
Watson.
Huh?
Moray Watson.
Oh, what did I say?
Wilson.
Well, okay.
Wilson!
Okay.